Mike, when we met here a little while ago in pre-production, you said something via email that I want to read back to you and get your thoughts on if you don't mind. You had said business development has completely changed recently to be less tactical and winning vacancies, to be more strategic, winning high value clients. What do you mean by that?
Good question to start with, Brad. Okay, so when I started in recruitment in the 90s, a long time ago, it was almost all relationship driven, strategic. So you went after the client. We knew the clients used lots and lots of freelancers, contractors, because that was my business. So we knew who they were. We knew which agencies were there. We knew the competition. We knew how many contractors they'd got. So we would focus on maybe a dozen, maybe 15 specific accounts, and we would go at them and be creative and persistent and patient until we eventually won them, right? That was the deal. Because when you win those type of clients, you get a steady stream of vacancies that come through. It's relatively easy, and it's easy to grow, and it's easy to make money. And the money you make is cheap. It's not expensive in terms of time and effort to get it. It's easy, right? And that's how I grew my first business. When I started up, I copied that. I think we became more tactical. Hard to say, probably around about the time of the crash, just before, just after, maybe. And everything was focused on money. If I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to talk to you to get a deal. Or if you're a contractor or a candidate and you're no use to me, I need to get you off the phone quick, not get to the next person. Everything became very tactical. And business development training became just that. If you speak to a lot of recruiters and say, well, could you share with me what BD is? What they'll say is they'll tell you how they get vacancies. That's what they'll tell you, or how they sell in candidates, NPCs. It's all about the transaction. But the trouble with that is it's very hard to grow a business like that, especially now, because that kind of BD works really well in a very healthy market where there are more vacancies than there are people, because you can ring a hiring manager and they may have a supplier list they're happy with, but they're just not going with the CVs, the profiles. So the resumes, trying to remember American there, the resumes. So, so if you've got a good one, they'll take it. Now the market has flattened considerably. So whilst you're still throwing the net in and hopefully pulling a fish out, you've still got to focus on those clients that you know have a steady stream of deals, vacancies that you can satisfy. They're reasonably fair in terms of the rates and the deal. They're not looking for a cheap deal, and will allow them to work with you. That's what we want. We want those kind of clients, and there aren't many of them. But I'll tell you this, here's an interesting thing, right? The viewers at home can do this. Go through your sales ledger. So you go through all the people you've done business with, and you divide them into high and low profit. Okay, so the ones who are really high profit business and the ones that have not done so well. And it normally splits around the Pareto analysis. So 20% of your clients generate 80% of your business, your revenue, right? Then you look at that 20% and you see where they came from. Almost always they came from a relationship. Almost always. It's uncanny. So what we need to do, and this is what strategic BD is, we need an engine which creates relationships with high value decision makers. And then the game changes. So hope that was a concise enough description. I could talk on it for the next 3 hours, and I know we haven't got 3 hours. So hope
We
that
have
was
some time
concise
though.
enough.
It was, and we have some time together, and thinking through the filling the order now or getting the order now rather, and being tactical. It's because we presumably, the industry has been down for 4 or 5 years. That's ASA's data. We need the order today, so I can see why most BD would be tactical. We don't have the time to play the long game, right? If we
Well,
need the order today, go
you
ahead.
say that though, Brad, and I understand
Yep.
to get that pushback quite a lot.
Yep.
You're talking about, for strategic BD, you're only talking about, don't forget, 10 to 12 targets. That's all you're going for, really. But they're high value, so they're worth putting the effort in. We estimate about 20 minutes a day really invested in strategic BD. So if you can't find 20 minutes a day, you need to carry on like doing your best to get these cheap little vacancies that everybody else has got, and you'll never get them retained, and yada, 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 and good luck to you. Alternatively, keep doing that as best you can. Look after your existing clients as best you can, and start to build up a pipeline of people that you're building a relationship with layer by layer. And when they come in big. That's what I always say to people. It's not what you think. It's not. It's about creativity. It's about patience, and it's about persistence. It's not necessarily about time. You've got to be creative in the way that you approach people because you want that conversation to start with. That's the first thing that you need in a
Yeah.
strategic BD model. You need to get that first conversation. It doesn't have to be a sales pitch, but you're going to need that first conversation. And that's about being creative, being persistent, keep going, and being patient because it can take weeks, months, years. Having said that, I've done some strategic BD work and I've turned a client in less than a week because you stand out. Everybody else is, gives a job, gives a vacancy, what you got for me, and you
Yeah.
aren't. That's very refreshing. So, so I don't think it's up to people. I mean, carry on doing. If you've got a model that works for you, keep doing it. I say, but I think the way to build an empire is to be more strategic. And what you'll find is, as your strategic pipeline builds and begins to show fruit from it, your need for tactical BD, hitting the phones and sending your cold emails, diminishes. So at the end of my first business, I've had two. I don't think anyone did any. The only kind of tactical BD people would do is if they spoke to a contractor and they said, "Oh, I've just been put forward for a job. I didn't want it," and you might say, "Well, okay, I'll ring up, see if I can get it then." Why would you not? But the rest of it was all to do with managing accounts. And we're going to talk about that later, I know, but it's
Yeah.
about becoming the apex supplier. That's the deal. And the starting point for that is to become an apex supplier with a client who's big enough to return an investment for you. You don't just want the odd opportunity here and there. You're never going to make any money at that. You
Yeah.
need a steady stream of vacancies coming out and a good lifetime value from that client as well. So you've got to choose these clients well. And typically, they're well
Hmm.
protected, they're well looked after by their existing agencies, obviously, because they're a really high value client. But they exist. And as I say, if you want proof of this, just go through your sales ledger, look at your big clients, the most profitable ones, and see where they came from. Did they come from a cold call? Not so much. Some of them will have done, no doubt, but not so much. They mostly came from relationships, almost all, actually.
Hey, it's Brad taking a quick break to tell you about an offer for the first 7 people who find me on LinkedIn. We recently launched Rogue IQ, the AI marketing assistant built for staffing firms. I'm so excited about what this tool can do. I convinced our co-CEO to let me give away some free trials. So the first 7 people who act on this will get 1 free month of content. That's blogs, social posts, and SEO pages completely free. All custom to your company and target audience. Here's what you do. Open LinkedIn right now, find me, Brad Biley, and send me one word, Rogue IQ, ROG IQ. The first 7 people get access to 1 month of marketing content, no catch. Again, open LinkedIn right now, find me, Brad Biley, and send me one word, Rogue IQ. That's it. All right, let's get back to the show. How do you propose we land the first conversation? So I have a talk over here that I've given quite a bit called No One Wants to Talk to You. And it's all about this new modern sales landscape where we know 61% of people want a rep-free buying experience. We know 96% of people are doing their research on a potential partner before they even pick up the phone and call. How do we get a conversation in a modern landscape that is so protective of
Okay,
picking up a phone
I
call?
can answer that question for you. First of all, you have to know what your community, your target community, finds of interest right now. So, not a year ago, but right now. What are they talking about? What are the conversations they're having between themselves? What are they thinking when they're driving to work? What are they thinking? Wish I knew more about this, or this is a bit of a problem. And almost all of us have something of interest, including you and I, Brad, right? So there's things that, I mean, my at the moment is Claude, weirdly. I'm just very interested in Claude and I've started to play with it. So in 6 or 9 months, 12, I won't be because I'll have done what I'm going to do with it.
Yeah.
But right now, that's the thing. And everybody's got something like that, right? So you can find that out by talking to your existing client estate, to the people you already can talk to, the people you know that go to events where there people are talking. You can look online to see which LinkedIn posts are going wild in the community that you serve, right? So you should always follow your competitors on LinkedIn and see what they're posting and see what's going on. So it's not difficult to find that out, really. Then there are several things that you can do. My favorite is an event, some kind of event, not necessarily a physical event, because that's great to get people in a room, of course. But if you're trading across the world, which most of us do now, it's not really practical. But a physical event, now it could be as a guest on a podcast similar to this one. So you run a podcast, but you don't run it for people to listen to it or download it. You don't care about that. What you care about is getting a good, steady stream of guests so that when you show that roster to a potential guest who you want to do business with, they look at it and think, some great names in there. They come on the show because it's very flattering to be asked to come on a show and say, hey, would you come and talk about this, that, or the other? Because I think you'd have something to say which my audience would like. So that's a great conversation starter. If you don't want to do that, just running events. So we run webinars, probably 3 or 4 a year, and we do a live event every 2 weeks on LinkedIn Live, the Mike Ames Recruitment Show. So people tell us they're going to come to it. We know who they are. It's not like a podcast when you don't know, it's downloading stuff. We know. And to come to the webinars, they actually have to sign up, give us your
Yes,
name
sir.
and
Yeah.
so we know who they are. So we can track who they are. Now, once they've come to that kind of event, it's not that difficult to get them to something which is much smaller, like a round table or a workshop on a subject that they're interested in. You bring somebody in who's an expert in that field to talk about it or discuss it or whatever, right? This is only one stream of conversation starters. We've got
Sure.
loads of, because
Sure.
again, the rest of our talk on conversation starters. But when you think about it, you connect on LinkedIn, you start to engage on LinkedIn. You then send them an invitation to an event. They don't come. They do come. You know they come. Then you send them something after it. Then you invite them to a round table that you're doing. And of course, it's a pyramid. People drop off each stage. They get less and less, fewer people. But you get enough because these are high value prospects. Don't forget, these aren't just one-offs. These are people who've got work for you. You get enough to get them over the line. And that's all you need to do. This is not a volume game. That's not about volume. This is about precision. It's more of a sniper than a blunderbuss, right? So events are really good ways to start it. You can as well produce content which you've researched. So if for example, we produced a piece of content for our clients recently. We went out to about 50 candidates who'd accepted a job and also turned down a job. And we asked them why they chose that job over that job. Fairly straightforward. We took their answers from that. We stuck it through AI and we produced a little one-pager. Well, it was 2 pages actually, which essentially said, this is why candidates take jobs and turn them down. Right now, who wouldn't want to read that? It's original research. Of course you would. Why would you not? So to be able to offer that to people, would you like this? So we never send anything to anybody. We always say, would you like it? This is what it is. Would you like it? Because we want people to self-select. We want people to put their hands up and say, yeah, I want that. Because that started the process. And every time you interact in this way, the next interaction becomes easier. I haven't explained that terribly well, I know, but essentially you need to think about what's going to be of use or of interest to people and then deliver it to them or offer it to them. And then as they self-select, get them closer and closer to a one-to-one, which is where you need to be.
I think you touched on 2 things there that I'd love to add some context to as well. On you're referring to one-of-one content. I'm a big Alex Hormozy fan over here, and he talks about creating that content that no one else can create. And when you have market intelligence, you have market research, you have data, you can put together content like you're alluding to of why candidates are turning down an offer. I mean, you alluded to Claude. I could ask Claude that question and it could give me 6 or 7 ideas. But if I've interviewed 1,000 candidates, now I have the only intelligence on that information, that is content that has to be read.
Yeah,
And that I think is a shift in where content is going right now. It's
it
that
is.
where are you spinning the topic that anybody can answer, but in a lens that only you have access to?
Yeah, that we say over here, you need to go to the stakeholders of your stakeholders. So your stakeholders, if you're a recruiter, are hiring managers or HR directors or whatever. They're your stakeholders. Who are their stakeholders? Well, candidates for one, obviously. So what can we get from candidates that your stakeholders would want to know? Because that is a great source of content. The other thing, of course, now, as you mentioned, Claude, if you record all of your candidate interviews, your sessions with
Yes, sir.
candidates,
Yes.
and you stick that through Claude, it will give you some really interesting data without sacrificing whatever the American equivalent to GDPR is, which is to do with data protection. You can get some really good data that your stakeholder would be interested in because it's coming from their stakeholders. The other thing is the stakeholders of your stakeholders, the other area that people like to look for content is within a community. So if I'm talking to HR directors, what are other HR directors doing and saying? Because that's of interest as well, obviously. So I think there are plenty of sources. Now it's incredibly easy to create original content. Keep it simple, keep it short, and then don't give it to anybody. And don't make it, you've got to download, put your details in and download it. No, no, we offer people and say, this is it, this is what it does, this is how we made it, this is the results we're getting from other people. Would you like to see a copy of it? You would? Well, okay.
Yes.
In the old days, we would have said, well, I'll come and see you then. I'm in town on Thursday, I'll come and see you and drop it in, because we don't say that anymore. But there's a similar kind of online version of that in a sense. It really isn't that difficult. I'll tell you the other thing as well. You're quite right about people not wanting conversations, but it's not true they don't want conversations. What they don't want to do is be pitched at all the time by one-dimensional, dreary people just trying to make a quid or a dollar. I don't see the fun in that. Can I tell you a very quick story, which is going to
Please.
relate? I was going to tell this story later, but I'll tell it now because it relates to client care. Years ago, I knew an area manager for Ernst & Young. He managed the whole of the Midlands in the UK, big area. His name was Ronnie Bagg, a really nice guy. Knew him quite well. Out for lunch with him, and I said to him, Ronnie, so what makes a really good partner for Ernst & Young? And he was sort of reeling out things you would say, well, good at technically very good, dedicated, puts the hours in, yada, yada, yada. And at the end of it, he said, oh, of course, they've got to be an interesting dinner guest. I said, well, that's strange then, Ronnie. What do you mean by that? He said, we get most of our business through relationships. And a lot of those come from social events. Nobody is going to want to spend an evening sitting next to somebody who's dull as ditch water.
Ha.
Absolutely cock on,
Yeah.
right? So if
Yeah,
you've
yeah.
got a little something about you, if you have a conversation and you're not timid and you're not afraid to be you on the telephone, it just separates you out. Now, you've got to be your own person. You can't be somebody that you're not. But if someone rings me up and says, how are you? I might say, well, if I was a box of chocolates, I'd eat myself first. I'm that good. Or if I was any better, I'd
Yeah.
be twins. It's a
Yeah.
silly little thing, but it's starting to set the scene. I'm not just one of those dull people that's going to, well, have you got any vacancies for me? Right. So, yeah, people don't want to be bothered. But if they're going to get value from a call and if it's going to be interesting and useful to them, delivered by somebody who's got a personality, a different story altogether.
Hey, a quick pause before we get back to the show, because this is something every staffing leader needs to hear. Most staffing firms are spending a lot on benefits and still only covering about half of their workforce. That's exactly why I like what my friends at Benefits in a Card are doing. Instead of forcing owners into expensive, bundled health plans, they offer unbundled benefits designed for high turnover workforces. Things like free prescriptions through their free RX program, dental, vision, virtual urgent care, and supplemental coverage with no deductibles. The result? You can offer benefits to 100% of your workforce, control costs, and actually improve retention. If benefits have felt like a losing game, check out my friends at benefitsinacard.com and schedule a quick unbundled benefits review. Again, that's benefitsinacard.com. All right, let's get back to the show.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast and talking to a friend this morning with a Modern Wisdom podcast. Chris Williamson was talking to Cold Creek Dwayne, and on that show, Cold Creek Dwayne said, Chris asked him, how do you know you're on the right path at any given time? And he said, I can look myself in the mirror and say, I like myself, I'd buy me a beer. And if I can answer those two questions, that's how I know I'm on the right path. And I think it's alluding to, would I be a good dinner guest? Yes or no?
It's the same thing. Back in the day where we went out a lot, I mean, post-COVID, we pretty much all stopped that, didn't we? But you'd ring someone up and say, look, I'm going to be in town. You fancy a beer after work? And I know the alcohol culture has dropped off. More's the pity, I say, but there you go. But it was just, yeah, sure, Mike. Yeah, yeah, of course. The more people you say that to and they're keen to do it, you know you're in the right place.
Yep.
You know you're in the right place.
Yep.
And that's where you need to be. So, yeah. But anyway, that is the essence of this. To get that first, to come back to your question, you have to have something that's going to be a value of interest, and then you yourself have to be a pleasure to talk to. And it's not that difficult at all then. Really, it isn't. Persistence, patience, and creativity gets you there every time.
Again, when we were talking in pre-production, you made a comment that I want to bring back to the show here to get some additional context on. You had said client care is not account management. What do you mean by that?
It's on the same themes, really, I think. Flip it round, right? Do you want to be phoned up by people that just want to make money out of you? They're not interested in you. They don't want to get to know you. They don't want to help you outside of work, really. I'm sure they'll do a great job. If you give them a vacancy, they'll find the right people. And that's great. But it's a very transactional relationship. So client care, a part of client care is account management. Of course it is. It's about understanding what work is coming up. It's about managing the work that you have now. It's about dealing with any problems, which is normal account management. Of course it is. In addition to that, though, it's relationship management. I think this is an American expression, but you've got to get off the operational highway and onto the relationship rest area. So you've got to get to a place where you can shoot the breeze a little bit and you doesn't have to burn up hours and hours and hours. Of course, if someone's very busy, you can tell that. So get straight to business. That's fine. But very often people sit at their desk at home now and it's very dull. So to have someone ring up and chat and say, how are you? And to gather information, there's this concept of Pacific information. Have you come across that before? Pacific. It's basically the information that creates and strengthens relationships. So see if I can remember what the acronym stands for. So it's preferences, aspirations, challenges, interests, circumstantial, specific, family, interests, incidentals, and something else. Can't remember the last C, sorry about that. But you understand, it's data that you gather about someone. And the best way to think about it is that's the information you gather about your friends, people that you know. You know what football team or soccer team or American football team that they support. You know whether they like Chinese food or Indian food. You know whether they like beer or wine. You know when their birthday is. You know the sort of jokes they like to tell. You gather this information by interactions. You share a bit about yourself, and then they share a bit about themselves. And each iteration, each connection that you have, telephone call, visit, whatever it is, you learn a bit more and share a bit more. And then you start to riff off that information like you do with your friends.
Yeah.
How was the marathon last week? How did you do? You know, I see so-and-so lost again. These Redskins. I don't know many American football teams. So the Dallas Cowboys, there you go. I know those guys, right? So
Yeah.
I see they lost at the weekend. Rubbish they are. You know, whatever it is, you're starting to riff off the information that you learn, and they're doing the same with you. That's a relationship, right? That is a key element of client care because it builds trust, builds rapport, builds affinity, ultimately builds confidence. And if you're doing a great job for them, because that's critical, you can do all of that stuff, but if you're only average at recruitment, if you're not very good at it, don't matter how much client care you do, it's never going to happen for you there, right? So I take it as read that you're really good at delivery, but you put this client care on top and you put some decent account management by the side of it, game changer. Game changer. There's one more thing as well to come to in a second or two, but that's essentially what it is. It's not account management at all, which again is terribly transactional, Brad. That's what account management is.
I mean, service delivery is table stakes. We've entered a partnership based on the promise that I'm going to give you what you're paying for. I think the next level is client care. I think the only way we get to good strategic partnerships is to have the level of client care that you're alluding to, right? I could think of the top 5 clients that I might work with. I know everything about them. And when we get on the phone, it's not a conversation of, hey, buy something else from us. It's actually the quite opposite. It's 15 minutes of, how was the run last week? How'd everything go? How's the family? How are the bills doing this year? It's all about the personal side of it.
I think one of the most powerful. Go on, you go. Sorry, you go.
I'm sort of thinking, though, that I think in a modern landscape where we do so much work on Zoom and we've sort of painted a box that people are busier than they are. So when we get somebody for 30 minutes on Zoom, we get right down to business because that's the only time we have for them. If I'm in an office with you, Mike, we can talk nonsense all day, right? We have the water cooler, we have this, we have that. Or if I'm meeting with a client face to face, we have a little bit more time maybe. When you get on a Zoom call, you get on a phone call, I think the modern sales landscape wants to get right to business because it's like, I finally got a live call. I finally got it.
I think you're right to a point. Yeah. I think if it's a Zoom call with more than one person or more than 2 people, if there's several people dropping in, then you're absolutely right. Nobody wants to be rabbiting on about something, what they did at the weekend or something, right? So, however, if it's just you and I always start the conversation, how are you? Before I press the record button. How are you? And then I'll say, well, how are you? Well, you'd never guess this, what happened to me. Yeah. And I can tell if they're into that or not. Yeah. I can tell whether they're all business today or not. Of course you can. It's a human thing. We can detect that. But a telephone is completely different. If you're ringing someone up, if it's not a booked call, you just ring in, you would open the call. Hi, it's Brad, it's Mike. Yeah, hey, how are you, Mike? Yeah, very good. Have you got a couple of minutes to spare? So straight away, I'm not going to be in your face. If you're, no, Mike, I'm really busy. Okay, when's a better time to get you? Oh, yeah, ring me about 4 this afternoon. Yeah, we'll do. Right. So you're not going to impose. It's very simple to do. And then you say, well, okay, I'm just ringing to check out how you are. It's been ages since we spoke. And there's a couple of things happened this side I was going to share with you. Just want to know what's going on. And then just ask an open question and see what happens. It's called having a call with no agenda. And having a call with no agenda, again, I was trained back in the late 80s. That's what we were supposed to do. We had to make so many of those calls to contractors and clients and lapsed clients and prospects as we possibly could each week. And you'd be amazed what you get from that. Very often, in fact, I made a video about this, just putting it out on LinkedIn. I spoke to a client just to, how are you? And at the very end, he said, oh, by the way, you know that thing you did for us, that VOTC work, you couldn't do another little project, could you? Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll get Pete to give you a ring. Would I have got that work? I hope to think I would have done. Would I have got it yesterday? No, because it wasn't top of the list for him. It's just that I was on the phone, right? I think there's all sorts of levels to this. You're building a relationship which are non-transactional. I'm not just using you to make money. There's more to it than that. But at the same time, I'm putting myself in front of you. And if there is any work to be had in the near future, there's a very good chance that they'll say, oh, by the way, while you're on, we've got this piece of work. Can you help us with it? So again, in the transactional world, if there's no work, no money, I need to move on. And in some cases, people are trained to do that, which is madness, really. But I think if you manage clients, if you're in charge of clients, you've got a client estate of your own to manage, then you absolutely must have telephone calls with no agenda. You absolutely must do that and see where it takes you.
How often should that be baked into the week? I love where you're going with that. So if I have a 40-hour work week, let's speak modestly. I have a 40-hour work week. How many hours in theory should be these calls without an agenda?
Well, I follow colored time, the concept of colored time. So at the start of the month, I pretty much know how much I'm going to spend on key things for that month. And
Okay.
they're put into my diary. If I showed you my diary for this week, then there's different boxes and they've got different colors. So I know what they mean. Whether they're promotional, whether they're sales, whether they're client, whatever they may be. And I think network management, which is what this is, always should have at least a couple of hours a week, at least, right? If I've got more time, I give it more because I know it's a really good thing to do. If I've got less time because I've got client work I've got to finish, client work comes first, obviously, then I do less. But the idea that at the start of the month, you sort of think to yourself, well, how much time do I need to spend on this? And then baking that into your week in blocks, whether you use colored time or not, but you actually assign that time and do your best. The other thing, though, is to have a really good CRM system so you know who to call. It's all very well in your
Sure.
diary when it
Sure.
says, an hour client calls. Heck, who should I call? I don't know, really. I'll go and have a look. No. You've got to have a list to say, right, I'm going to call these guys this week. And I've always got a list of people I'm going to call, and I try and fit it in as best as I can.
Yeah.
If I can't put time aside, I'll just say I've got a couple of minutes. Before I came here to sit with you, I finished half an hour early. There was no reason for me to start the next thing because it was more than half an hour. This thing would start. So I spoke to an ex-client, a lapsed client, just catch up with him. Didn't get anything from it, but that's not the point.
Yeah.
So, I think you can fit it in. If you're organized, it's easy to pick up the phone and say, how are you? Just ringing to see how you are. Or if you've got no time for that, I mean, I don't like emails for this, to be fair, but an email is better than nothing. Drop an email. I haven't spoken to you for ages. How are you? Not really brilliant, but better than nothing, that's for sure.
I think there's a lot there. And I think one, you alluded to having a good list, knowing who you're going to call, having a plan. There's a lot that goes into that I think the modern sales landscape is missing. We don't have these no agenda calls because one, we don't know who to call in the first place. Two, if we're calling, we hope we can get some sort of business from them. We're hoping for the transaction right away because the industry has been down for 4 to 5 years now. So we're grasping for air. We're playing the wrong game. And Mike, where I like where you're headed is it's rethinking how we approach business development, how we approach sales. I'm always relationship first. You're preaching to the choir here personally, but I think it paints a different lens to how the sales landscape should be looked at.
Yes, it does. It has changed. The world has changed, I think. And for lots of reasons, in our industry, in UK, and I think it's the same in the States, TAs, the rise of TAs, AI, of course, is drifting along. The market's a bit flatter. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. We also have fractional TAs here, which are they're not full time with the company. They might do a few days here or a few days there, which means smaller companies now got TA cover, which they never had before. So it's not the same landscape as it was, and therefore you can't do what you did before. You need to be different. But another little tip that I found over the years is if you have a call with no agenda, and just a relationship call really, and at the end of it, if you say, oh, by the way, we didn't get a chance to talk about it today. Is it worthwhile us catching up to see what's happening, for your work over the next 3 or 4 months? And it's a great way for, oh, actually, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. We've got something coming up. When's a good time to call you? Call me in a couple of weeks. It's almost like an afterthought, but you don't miss it. You don't have to be non-transactional. Got to make money at the end of the day.
Sure.
It's not like
Sure.
these aren't, we always say, treat your clients 95% the same as your friends. One part of the 5% is you don't ask your friends for money. Well, I hope not anyway. So
Yeah.
that's the difference. You do ask clients for money because we want work that we can do for them and get paid. So you don't have to be non-transactional, but you can tell the way it's going. You can feel the conversation, and you'll know whether it's right to ask there and then, or the double ask it's a very common sales tool, which I'm sure you're aware of. You don't ask what you want. You ask for permission to ask what you want, because it's so much easier for them to say yes. So you might say, we haven't spoken. We haven't met. I've seen you a few times, spoken to you on telephone, Tim. We've never met. I'm coming to the city in a couple of weeks' time. Is it okay if I ring you up and see if you're available? Chances are they'll say yes. So then when you ring up and say, can I come and see you? They've already said once yes. Chances of them saying yes again are really good. And it's the same here. I'd like permission really to talk to you about what's happening in the business, see when there's opportunities for us. When's a good time to do that? Oh, let's do it now, Mike. Or yeah, give me a call in a couple of 3 weeks. We now know that call is going to be transactional. That's the context for the call that we've just had. They've said ring back to talk about work, and then it's a different kind of call completely. None of this is rocket science, and it's very old. This is how I was taught to do it in the 80s when I was trained in recruitment. It's not new. None of this is new. And it draws on, I think, human nature and the way in which people like to be treated as people. I don't think it's any different at all, actually. There's a lot to be said for it. If you can, what do they always say? If you want to be original, think of something new, or take something old and dust it off. Very true.
Do you think AI, technology, digital media, social media has sort of messed up the sales landscape? Why have we gotten away from this relationship-driven business? Why is it so transactional?
Because it's harder work. There's a chance of rejection. There's a chance of failure, which you don't get if you send an email. They ignore it, but that's not failure. That's not rejection, is it? So if you put a comment on someone's post, they reply back or they don't. There's no judgment, of course. But if you ring someone up and ask them to spare you some time and they say no, a lot of people can't handle rejection. Doesn't bother me. I'm a baby boomer, so I've got skin the thickness of a rhino, but I don't care. But some people do. And I think you just need to get over that, because there is so much territory out there which is empty that people aren't occupying because they're keyboard warriors. They're tapping out emails and social media and all the rest of it. Or they're not really putting a lot of thought into how they're going to approach a call or how they're going to take the client to the next level. Then it's not about that. They're not being creative and thinking about this. They're just hitting the phones. Now, in answer to your question, I love social media. Too much, actually, as it turns out. I've just recently, over the last few weeks, changed how I use LinkedIn considerably, actually. And I'm going to be making more changes to that, which has dramatically increased the number of interactions I get and impressions on the posts, which just dropped off a cliff about, 3-4 months ago. Little did I know that LinkedIn have changed their policy again, right? So I was still working under the old way. So I think it's important to that, but it serves a purpose. Have you seen that interview of Steve Jobs? I love it. He's interviewed and he talks about Scientific American. Does that ring a bell? No? Okay. So
No, not
been
familiar.
interviewed and they're talking about tools, Microsoft, that wash my mouth out with soap, Apple tools, right? And he said, when he was a kid, he was reading Scientific American, and someone had done a study to see how many kilocalories it took to move a kilometer or a mile, I probably would have said. And they put this table together, and right at the top was a condor. And then human beings are about a third of the way down in terms of efficiency. And then someone had the presence of mind to include in that list a man on a bicycle, blew the condor away, like massively more efficient. And that's what tools do. They amplify your ability. They speed up, standardize, and I think systemize what you do. They simplify it. And so social media can do that for you. Or like any tool, you can use it badly and it'll just burn time. AI is the same. If you use AI properly, because there's two types of AI, isn't there really? I'm not an expert yet because I've not finished my Claude course, but there's agentic AI, obviously, which is actually writing things that will constantly monitor and do whole tasks for you. And then there's just putting the transcript from this recording into something that gives you a newsletter. Right? You need both, but they're just tools, is all they are. They're just tools, and it doesn't replace relationship building. What it should do is amplify your ability to do it. If you use it in that way, you're absolutely fine.
I had just posted on LinkedIn yesterday that AI is creating two types of professionals. I'm trying to find it quickly for you so I can give you exactly my wording on it. I said AI is creating two types of professionals. The first asks, write this for me. The second asks, help me think through this. And then I posed the question at the end, who do you want to be? And I think
Well,
what we're alluding to right now is the tool can make us superhuman. It's designed and built to do that. I think it's also making a lot of people lazy,
yeah.
unproductive, and
And the
candidly
same as everybody else,
distracted.
what it's doing.
Yes.
It's making them the
Yes.
same as everybody else because AI is not a differentiator, really. What you do
Correct.
with AI can be a differentiator. We always say you should use
Yep.
AI to help you be better at the things that AI can't do. AI can't build relationships, and it never will be able to build relationships. It's a machine. But who wants to have a relationship with a machine? Not me, that's for sure. So I think, there are lots of things you can do to accelerate and amplify your ability to build strong working relationships with people, which is what they want more than anything else.
Yeah. When we first spoke, you mentioned that differentiation is easier than most people think, and we tend to overcomplicate it. What do you mean by
Yes.
that?
Okay. Well, there's different ways to differentiate, of course. By far and away, the strongest is niche. I think we all know that. Teaching me grammar to suck eggs, but to have a proper niche or a micro niche, I don't know whether that translates. A niche tends to be servicing a sector. I don't know, pharmaceuticals or something. A micro niche are specific roles within a sector, sometimes within a type of company. So it's very, very micro. You're not going to make all your money from that, but what that's going to do is open doors for you. That's its purpose. So that you can say, well, if you want these people, I'm the guy. Let me prove to you that I'm the guy because I've got all this proof. I've got all these testimonials. Let me show you the size of my squad of people who've got that skill that's available to me. And that's a great door opener. It really is. But of course, not everyone has that, particularly if you've just started. You're starting out in the business and you don't have that niche yet. You're trying to build it madly. And of course, it's very easy to pick the wrong niche and you have to start again, yada, yada, yada. But there are lots of things that you can do. And I'll tell you the most important one, which you will smile at and nod, no doubt. But a few years ago, we did some informal surveys of end users, the stakeholders of our stakeholders, right? So the people that our clients are interested in, hiring managers and decision makers. And we asked them quite a few questions. And one of them was, well, why do you use one supplier over another, really? And I tell you, the answer was really simple. So simple that you'd think everybody does it, but I promise they don't. The answer was the ones that get me CVs that nobody else is getting, and they entirely match my need, the vacancy. And if I offer them the job, they'll take it. That's it, really. So you might think, well, doesn't everybody do that? No, no, they don't. They're very average at
Yeah.
delivery, right? And this is what the good times from 2010 to 2000, say, I don't know, 2022 or something. They made it easy to be average and make a living. You didn't have to be brilliant. Well, now you have to be exceptional at delivery. You have to really understand what the brief means. You have to understand what the EVP of the client site is so that you can sell the company. We did a survey, and over 77% of candidates are as interested or more interested in the company they're being asked to join as they are the role they're being asked to take. Now, let that sink in.
Is that right?
What that means is if you don't lead on the company, you're missing out. Get them fired up about the company and then the role, because you can counteroffer a role for sure. You can't counteroffer a company, right? So, but this
Can we
is
pause
the
there for a
level.
second?
Say again?
Can we pause there for a second? I would think 85 to 90% of recruiters are burying the company until one of the last stages of the process.
Yeah, big
And you're
mistake.
and you're and you're articulating that it was 77% of candidates
Yeah,
value
yeah.
the
I
company
thought.
as much as the role.
Yeah, I read on a post something. It said it was 64% or something. I can't remember. I didn't
Sure.
believe it. So we ran a poll,
Okay.
and it was quite a well voted for poll, and that came out at about 77%, I think, as interested or more interested. So that those two things added together. And so if you can Google it, I've since Googled it or clawed it, as we now say. And there's loads of studies that point this out. If you think about it, come on now, Brad, suppose I rang you up and said, I got this fantastic job, and you get all excited about the job. And then you look at the company and it's rubbish. It's glass door score is through the floor. People are saying unpleasant things about it. You go for the interview and it's like, ugh, right? You're going to take that job? I don't think
Absolutely
so.
not.
I don't think so. Whereas if you get an average job, which is perhaps a step up from where you are now, big enough change in a great company, you're thinking to yourself, I'll get in. And when I'm in, I'll do great work and I'll get moved on to other things. It makes perfect sense, really. So, but if you don't believe me,
Yeah.
look, get the data out right. Run a poll yourself. The
You know,
bottom
it's
line is that this is part of people. People don't see recruitment as a proper profession. I think to me, it certainly was. I took a massive pay drop, a 50% pay drop to become a recruiter because I was trained in IT. My background, my degree is in computer science, and I worked in IT for the first 6-7 years of my career. So I took a massive drop because I wanted to do this, very much so. And then took another 50% pay drop 6 months later when we set up our first business. If only I'd known then what I know now. But the point is that I am very interested in every aspect of delivery because that's where you make your money. Yeah, you can flower it up with a bit of sales, bit of marketing, bit of brand, this, that, and the other. Fair enough. You make your money because you're really, really good at delivery and you understand what clients want and you make sure that you're really, really good at delivering that. You will always work because clients will keep using you and word will get out that you're actually good at what you do, both with candidates, because I see candidates as customers as well. I always have to. But to me, there's no difference, right? They're going to say nice things about you, and then the candidates are going to come through referrals as well. Or you can treat them badly and just want to make money out of them and see what that gets you. Personally, I think if you see recruitment as a professional service, like attorneys or accountants or draftsmen or whatever, they've got a certain professional element about them because that's what you are. When I first started my first job, the managing director, the owner of the business, had us all in the first week, one-on-one, and he said the same thing to all of us, apparently. He said, what's your job title? I said, I'm a recruitment consultant. He said, yes. He said, recruitment is what you do. Consultant is what you are. You're there to be consulted. You help the client get the right answer for them. Now, hopefully, we'll make money out of that, but not always. But you do the right thing. And I just thought that's what you had to do. It's only some years later when I realized that a lot of my competitors didn't see recruitment in that way. Their job was to make money. And so therefore you forget doing the right thing. But doing the right thing always comes back and pays back dividends eventually, always. Just, it's the way to build a reputation, I think. You don't build a reputation through LinkedIn posts or any of that shizzle. You build a reputation by consistently being good at what you do.
I agree with you. I'm hung up on the thought of so many people being interested in where they work instead of what they do. And I mean, we know this, but the industry buries who the employer is until one of the last stages of the process. And I have never understood why. And I had an uncle who passed away a little while ago who told me I remember him distinctly saying when he retires, he wants to work at Disney World. I said, "What are you going to do?" He said, "I don't care. I'll pick gum off the street. I don't care
Yeah.
what I do. I just want to work there. I want to be there every single day." And, he didn't get to that point because he passed away, before he could. But I think that's what we're speaking to, right? The job doesn't matter as much as I want to be in this building with this team doing this kind of work. And I think everybody has that, right? Everybody has their dream company that they would leave for at X percent less or hopefully X percent more, whatever it is. But when we call on people, candidate side, I know we've been talking sales for now 45 minutes, but we call on candidates on the candidate side of things. I would say 90 to 95% of the time we're leading with the role. We're leading with what the person will do, not where they'll
Yeah.
do it. And that
And
doesn't get me fired up.
I'll tell you the interesting thing about that as well, Brad, is that for any particular job role, now these
Mhm.
numbers can vary slightly, but go
Sure.
with the numbers I'm going to give you, right? Any
Yep.
particular job role in the world, about 20% of those people are actively looking for a new job right now. So they're on LinkedIn, they're looking at the job boards, they're looking at the adverts, they're responding to recruiters, sending them messages or leaving them voicemails or whatever it is, because they want a bloody job, right? So they're actively looking for work. About 10%, you couldn't prize them out with a 10-mile lever. Right? Those guys, they're not leaving for whatever reason. They're not going anywhere. The real battleground is the 70% of what we call passive but open. So they're not looking. They don't look at the job boards. They don't look at LinkedIn for new work. A recruiter leaves them a message as voicemail, just ignore it. They get an email, they just delete it. They're not interested. But if you can actually get to talk to those people and get them fired up about the company, then you stand a chance of getting them to go for the role. And that's where the big money is. That is where the big money is passive but opens. If you can tap into that market, and I know the stats that sit around it, as you do, to get to speak
Yeah.
to these people,
Yeah.
but they haven't got 5 other options on the go. They just, that's an interesting deal. That's an interesting company. They're going places. I like the sound of that. That's an interesting role. Yeah, okay, put me forward for that. They're not then going to spring into action and send their CV out to 10 other agencies. It doesn't work like that. So, and that certainly with search, I don't know whether you've done search, but if you've done search, that's where mostly they hunt. They hunt in the 70%, the passive but opens. Whereas traditional recruiters are hunting in the 20%. They're blasting a few emails out, whacking some stuff on LinkedIn and the job boards, and then see what happens, and that's enough to make money, right? But it's not where you want to be, honestly. You do not want to be there. It's a nasty place to be.
Mike, before I give you the floor to talk about yourself, anything you wish we talked about that we didn't get to that you think the industry needs to hear right now?
I think we covered a tremendous amount, didn't we? I
I do too.
think that the thing that we covered on it slightly, but I just want to put a perspective on it. AI is very new, and it's like magic. It does magical things. Any time in human history when technology has done something that no one can explain, they would have thought it was witchcraft or magic. And if AI would have been around 200 years ago, we would think it was right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but it isn't. It lies. It gets things wrong. It produces banal stuff, even though you think it isn't. It doesn't have spelling mistakes and it doesn't have grammatical errors, but it's dull or it's plain or it's a bit banal, right? So just remember it is a tool. Use it to make you better the things that it can't do. Go into that place because then it can't leverage you out. Whereas if you do the things that the machine will eventually be able to do, sooner or later it'll take that job. 100%. They say a fish rots from the head down. Our industry is going to rot from the bottom up. It's going to start with a commodity end and it's going to move up and up and up. And the machines will take more and more of it. So you need to move up the chain now. You need to move up. You need to niche down and you need to get yourself into a position where you are a relationship salesman or saleswoman and you'll be just fine. It'll see you out. This business will.
Mike, I want to give you the space to talk a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do.
Well, I have built and sold 2 businesses. So for a combined total of about $40 million, no, about $60 million in today's money, right? So I don't work for the money. I work because I really like it. And you would think that I would go around saying, hey, come and work with me because I'll show you how to build and sell 2 businesses. No, you can't do that. In the United States, it's less than 0.1% of recruitment companies that end in a noticeable transaction, an MBO or a trade sale, right? It's tiny. Statistically, you're not going to do it. So what we do is help people build a high profit business that doesn't need them working in it all the time, and that is secure. It's called a PLW, Profit, Lifestyle and Wealth. And you make yourself wealthy not by selling a business, but by investing each year in something that's going to give you a return of between 6 and 10%. You do that. And I don't know whether you've come across that 3-4-8 rule for businesses. So it takes 3 years to establish a viable business, another 4 years to make it high profit and doesn't need you all the time, another 8 years on top of that to make yourself financially independent by investing the profits, right? So it's a 3-4-8 rule. So what we do is help people build those businesses. We have an online course, we do consultancy work, we do coaching work. All of it is to build a business that's high profit, doesn't need you in it all the time, and is secure. So it's not going to just disappear one day. You do that, you can run it for 20 years if you want to. So that's what we do.
Very good. And our 2-question rapid fire round before I let you go. One book that has fundamentally changed your life.
Wow. I was thinking about this because you were very good enough to give me a heads up on it. And there are lots of books over the years that have meant something to me. Thriving on Chaos was a big book for me in the 90s. Purple Cow by Seth Godin. The very best. I'm going to answer the question, by the way. There is one book, The Fred Factor, which is probably one of the best client care books you'll ever come across. The Fred was an American mailman. You have to read it. It's brilliant, right? But I think that the book that had the biggest impact for me was a book called Up the Organization by Robert Townsend. And when I was just started in my first job as a programmer in the early 80s, the project leader I worked for gave me a copy of this book and said, read this and give it back, see what you think. I'd never read anything like it. And it was about not letting the organization grind you down and really making a maximum impact within an organization. Blew me away. And I have a copy now. It was out of print for years. I'm not sure you can get it anymore, but I found a copy in an old bookshop and
That's
I
awesome.
bought it. And a lot of it's outdated now. It's not, but it's just changed. It's like, oh, that you have to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
It's not this, it's that. Not what they told me at university, not what they told me at the interview. It's this massive impact. Great guy, Robert Townsend. God rest his soul.
Very good. And as all the listeners know, as much as I'm helping you build your library, really those are just now 4 books that I can add to my Amazon cart. Well, 3. You said one's out of print, so 3 that I can add to my own Amazon cart
I
for
think you
next
might be
month.
able to get secondhand copies, and it's worth it just for
Okay.
the historic value.
Very good. One piece of advice that you would give to somebody just starting in staffing and recruiting today, what would you tell them?
Easy. Be obsessed. And obsession means you can't stop thinking about it, learning about it, experimenting with it, being with people that are equally as interested in it as you are at delivery. It's dull, it's boring, it's not sexy like sales and account management. No. But it's where the money is. If you are brilliant, if you're exceptional at delivery, all the different aspects of it, and there are only 5, if you can do those better than anybody else, you will never starve in this business. And you'll have a steady stream of work coming in once your reputation builds up. It's the most important thing, more than anything else added together, is delivery.
Mike Ames, it's a fantastic conversation, my friend. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure.